The champagne flute shattered against the limestone fireplace, and nobody even flinched. I stood frozen in the doorway of the penthouse terrace, rain-soaked and trembling, watching 60 people turn away from me like I was something diseased. My heels squelched water onto the Italian marble. My designer dress, the one I'd spent 3 paychecks on, clung to my body like a second skin, mascara probably streaking down my face in black rivers. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Jesus Christ, Rachel. Derek's voice cut through the jazz music and polite conversation like a serrated knife. My fiancé, correction. My ex-fiancé, as of approximately 4 hours ago, stood at the center of the room in his perfectly tailored charcoal suit, flanked by his colleagues from Meridian Global Strategies. Did you seriously just show up here? I tried to speak, but my throat had closed. The taxi had broken down 6 blocks away. I'd run through the storm because I couldn't wait another second to explain, to fix what had broken between us this afternoon. The engagement ring that he'd thrown at my feet was now safety pinned inside my clutch because I'd been terrified of losing it. This is pathetic, Derek continued, his face twisted in disgust. Even for you. Someone laughed, a high, tinkling sound that seemed to give everyone else permission. The laughter spread through the room like a virus. Derek, please, I managed to choke out. I just need 5 minutes. Can we talk somewhere private? Private? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. No, no. I think everyone here deserves to hear this. They should know exactly who you are. My heart hammered against my ribs. This wasn't Derek. Not my Derek, who brought me coffee in bed and left post-it notes on the bathroom mirror with terrible jokes. This was someone else wearing his face. Ladies and gentlemen, Derek announced, raising his fresh champagne glass in a mock toast. I'd like to introduce you to my former fiancée, Rachel Chen. Emphasis on former. As of today, she is officially out of my life. The room had gone quiet except for the rain hammering against the floor-to-ceiling windows. Derek, you want to know why? Derek spoke over me, his voice rising. Because this woman, who I supported for 2 years while she found herself, who I paid rent for, who I was planning to marry in 3 months, decided that my success was somehow offensive to her. That wasn't true. That wasn't what happened at all. I told you about my promotion this morning, Derek continued, pacing now like a prosecutor before a jury. Regional director, 20% salary increase, my own team, everything I've worked toward for 5 years. And you know what she said to me? He paused for effect. Several people leaned forward. She said, "Maybe this isn't the right time?" Derek's voice dripped with contempt. Maybe I should consider if this is really what I want. As if I'm some child who doesn't know his own ambitions. As if her opinion matters more than everything I've built. That's not what I meant, I whispered. But my voice was too soft to carry. She's jealous, Derek announced. Pure and simple. She can't handle that I'm succeeding while she's still trying to figure out what she wants to be when she grows up at 29 years old. The words landed like physical blows. I watched several women in the crowd exchange knowing glances. A man near the bar shook his head sympathetically at Derek. So I ended it, Derek said with an air of finality. Because I deserve someone who celebrates my victories, not someone who tries to diminish them out of her own insecurity. The applause started slowly, then built. Actual applause. People were clapping for him dumping me. Marcus Webb stepped forward from the crowd, Derek's mentor and the senior VP of strategy at Meridian. He was a silver-haired man in his 50s, with the kind of commanding presence that made boardrooms go silent. Derek, my boy, Marcus said, clapping a hand on his shoulder. Best decision you could have made. A man on his way up can't be shackled to dead weight. More approving nods. More pitying looks thrown my way. I should call security, Derek said, pulling out his phone. Have you escorted out? No. The word came out stronger than I intended. No, I'm leaving. I turned toward the elevator, my soaked heels clicking against the marble. Behind me, the party resumed instantly, the jazz music swelling, conversations picking up as if I'd never existed. The elevator doors opened immediately, like the universe was eager to expel me from this place. I stepped inside and watched Derek's face as the doors slid closed. He was already laughing at something Marcus had said, already moving on, already erasing me. The lobby of Derek's building, technically his parents' building, though he always conveniently forgot to mention that detail, was mercifully empty. The night concierge pretended not to notice my destroyed appearance as I stumbled out into the rain. I had no umbrella, no working phone. The water damage from my run had finally killed it. No way to call another taxi. So I walked. The city blurred around me through tears and rain. Seattle's downtown core was quieter than usual for a Friday night, most people having the good sense to stay indoors during the downpour. I walked for blocks without direction, my feet operating on autopilot while my mind replayed the scene over and over. Maybe this isn't the right time. That's what I'd said this morning when Derek told me about the promotion. We'd been in our apartment. My apartment, technically, though Derek had been living there for 18 months. I'd been making breakfast, still in my pajamas, when he'd burst through the door 3 hours earlier than expected. I got it, he'd shouted, lifting me off my feet and spinning me around. Regional director, they're announcing it today. I'd been happy for him. Of course I was happy. I'd watched him work 80-hour weeks, sacrifice weekends, pour everything into climbing Meridian's corporate ladder. But something in his eyes had made me pause, a manic gleam that I'd started noticing more frequently over the past few months. That's amazing, I'd said, pulling back to look at him properly. Derek, that's incredible. We need to celebrate, he'd said, already texting someone. I'm throwing a party tonight, the penthouse. Everyone from the executive team will be there. Tonight? I'd echoed. Derek, we were supposed to have dinner with my parents tonight. It's my dad's birthday. He'd waved that away like I was talking about canceling a dentist appointment. We'll reschedule. This is important, Rachel. This is my career. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. And that's when I'd said it. When I'd tried to voice the concern that had been building for months, watching Derek transform from the thoughtful man I'd fallen in love with into someone I barely recognized. Maybe this isn't the right time, I'd said carefully. Maybe you should think about whether this promotion is really what you want. His face had changed instantly. What the hell does that mean? It's just, you haven't seemed happy lately. Even when you get what you want, you're already thinking about the next thing, the next promotion, the next goal. You're exhausted all the time. We barely see each other anymore. I'm building a career, he'd snapped. I'm sorry if that's not convenient for you. That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying, Rachel? Because it sounds like you're telling me to turn down the biggest opportunity of my professional life. No. I'm saying maybe you should take a breath and think about what you really want. Not what Marcus wants for you, or what looks good on paper, but what will actually make you happy. The argument had escalated from there. Words I couldn't take back. Words he couldn't take back. And then he'd pulled the ring off my finger, actually yanked it off, and thrown it at my feet. We're done, he'd said coldly. Pack your shit and get out of my life. This is my apartment, I'd pointed out, which in retrospect probably wasn't the wisest thing to say. Fine, I'll leave. But don't you dare show your face at my party tonight. I mean it, Rachel. Stay away. But I hadn't been able to stay away. After hours of crying and trying to process what had happened, I'd convinced myself that if I could just talk to him, just explain what I'd really meant, we could fix this. We could fix us. I'd been so spectacularly wrong. A car horn blared, jerking me back to reality. I'd wandered into the street without looking. The driver shouted something crude as they swerved around me. I stumbled back onto the sidewalk, my ankle twisting in my ruined heels. I needed to get home. But home was the apartment filled with Derek's things, Derek's smell, Derek's presence in every corner. The thought of returning there made my stomach turn. Instead, I found myself standing outside the Copper Mark, a quiet bar tucked between a bookstore and a vintage clothing shop. I'd discovered it 3 years ago when I'd first moved to Seattle, back when I was still trying to figure out who I was and what I wanted from life. Back before Derek. The warmth hit me as soon as I pushed through the door. The bar was nearly empty. Just a few regulars scattered at corner tables and a bartender who looked up from polishing glasses. "Jesus," he said, taking in my appearance. "You look like you lost a fight with a fire hydrant." "Something like that," I managed, sliding onto a bar stool. "Let me get you a towel." He disappeared into the back and returned with a stack of clean bar towels. "What happened?" "Long story. I've got time." He gestured around the empty bar. Not exactly a raging Friday night. I dried my face and arms mechanically. My fiancé broke up with me this morning. Then I showed up to his party like an idiot and got humiliated in front of 60 people. The bartender winced. "Okay, that's rough. What's your poison?" "Whiskey. Neat. The strongest thing you have." He poured a generous measure of something amber and slid it across to me. "On the house. Breakup policy." I downed it in one burning gulp. Another. "Easy there, Rocky. You want to tell me what happened? Or do you want to sit in dramatic silence while I pretend not to watch you spiral?" Despite everything, I almost smiled. His name is Derek Thornton. He works for Meridian Global Strategies. He got promoted to regional director today. Fancy. Very. His whole life is fancy. Fancy apartment, fancy friends, fancy career trajectory. I was supposed to be part of that. The successful girlfriend who made him look good at company events. "Let me guess," the bartender said, refilling my glass without being asked. "You didn't want to play the part?" I didn't even realize there was a part to play until I was already cast. I took a slower sip this time. When we met, Derek seemed different. He was ambitious, sure, but he also talked about balance and purpose and making a real difference. He volunteered at a youth center. He read philosophy. He seemed real. And then? And then he got deeper into Meridian's corporate culture. Started spending more time with Marcus Webb. That's his mentor. Started working longer hours, bringing work home every night, canceling plans last minute. The volunteering stopped. The philosophy books gathered dust. He became obsessed with climbing the ladder. The bartender nodded knowingly. Corporate Stockholm Syndrome. This morning, when he told me about the promotion, I could see how wired he was. Not happy excited. Manic excited. Like he was on something. And I swirled the whiskey in my glass, watching the amber liquid catch the dim bar lights. I wanted my Derek back. The real one. Before Meridian got their hooks in him. "So you suggested he turn it down?" "Not exactly. I suggested he think about whether it's really what he wants. Whether he's doing this for himself or because Marcus keeps pushing him toward it." And he lost his mind. Completely. Called me unsupportive, jealous, insecure. Said I couldn't handle his success because I haven't figured out what I want to do with my life. The bartender raised an eyebrow. "What do you do?" I hesitated. This was always the complicated part. "I'm between things right now." "Ah. It's not what you think," I said quickly. "I have a job. I work as a consultant. Independent projects mostly. But it's not a traditional career path. and Derek never really understood it. What kind of consulting? Another hesitation. The truth was complicated in ways I couldn't easily explain. Organizational psychology. I help companies identify structural problems, interpersonal conflicts, toxic management patterns, that kind of thing. So you analyze office drama for money? Basically, yeah. And Derek didn't appreciate the irony of dating an expert in workplace dysfunction while working for what sounds like a toxic corporate hellhole. I laughed, the sound surprising me. He didn't see Meridian as toxic. He saw it as prestigious, elite, the kind of place people kill to work at. Maybe they should reconsider the metaphor. The second whiskey had started to smooth the sharp edges of the evening. My hands had stopped shaking. The humiliation began to feel more distant, like something that had happened to someone else. The worst part, I said quietly, is that he wasn't completely wrong. The bartender tilted his head. About what? About me not having it together. I'm 29 years old. I live in a studio apartment. I take freelance gigs that barely cover rent most months. I don't have a 5-year plan or a career trajectory or any of the things Derek values. Sounds like you dodged a bullet then. Does it? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like I'm the bullet that just got dodged. My phone, or rather, my water-damaged, non-functioning phone, buzzed suddenly in my clutch. I pulled it out, surprised to find the screen flickering to life. One message had come through before it died again. Unknown number. We need to talk. Coffee tomorrow, 9 a.m. North Point Cafe. This is Vivian Cross. I stared at the message, my alcohol-warmed brain struggling to process it. Vivian Cross. I knew that name. Everyone in Seattle's corporate consulting world knew that name. Vivian Cross was the founder and CEO of Apex Strategic Partners, the most exclusive management consulting firm in the Pacific Northwest. They didn't take clients. Clients begged to be taken by them. They didn't advertise. Their reputation was whispered about in boardrooms and executive retreats. They were ghosts who came in, identified exactly what was broken in an organization, and fixed it with surgical precision. And Vivian Cross wanted to have coffee with me. What the hell? I muttered. Good news or bad news? The bartender asked. I have no idea. I showed him the message. You know who this is? He let out a low whistle. Apex Strategic Partners. Those people are legends. My buddy worked for a company they consulted for last year. He said they walked in, spent 2 weeks observing, then presented a 20-page report that basically redesigned the entire management structure. Half the executive team got fired, the other half got promoted. Company's stock tripled in 6 months. Why would she want to talk to me? Maybe she saw your work. You said you do consulting. Yeah, but small stuff. I'm not in her league. I'm not even in her sport. But even as I said it, a memory surfaced. 3 months ago, I'd been hired by a mid-sized tech company to evaluate their product development team. It was supposed to be a 2-week contract. Observe some meetings, interview team members, write a basic assessment. Instead, I'd uncovered a systematic pattern of credit theft. The VP of Product Development had been claiming his team's innovations as his own ideas, presenting them to the board while the actual creators got nothing. I'd documented everything meticulously and presented my findings to the CEO. The VP had been fired within a week. 3 of his team members had been promoted to leadership positions. And I'd received a glowing recommendation letter that I'd honestly thought nothing of at the time. Could that have gotten Vivian Cross's attention? You should go, the bartender said. What have you got to lose? What indeed? My engagement was over. My apartment was contaminated with memories of Derek. My professional life consisted of scraping together freelance gigs while trying to convince myself I was finding my path, rather than just floundering. Yeah, I said, downing the last of my whiskey. I'll go. Want me to call you a cab? I'll walk. I need to clear my head. In that, he gestured at my destroyed dress and broken heels. I've had worse nights. That's either really sad or really badass. And I can't tell which. I smiled despite myself. Both, probably. The rain had softened to a drizzle by the time I left the copper mark. My apartment was a 20-minute walk, giving me plenty of time to think about everything that had happened. Derek's words kept echoing in my head. Dead weight. Jealous. Insecure. Was he right? Had I tried to sabotage his success because I couldn't achieve my own? No. The answer came immediately. Instinctively. I knew what I'd seen in Derek these past months. The manic energy, the obsessive focus on advancement, the way he'd started treating people like stepping stones. That wasn't success. That was something else entirely. But I'd handled it badly. I could see that now. Questioning his promotion on the morning he received it, however well-intentioned, had been the wrong move. I should have waited. Found a better time, approached it more carefully. Except, there was never going to be a good time. Derek didn't want careful conversations about his well-being. He wanted unconditional support for every decision, every sacrifice, every step up the ladder. And I couldn't give him that. Not when I watched him becoming someone I didn't recognize. My apartment building came into view, a converted warehouse in Capitol Hill with decent rent and questionable heating. I climbed the 3 flights to my studio, each step feeling like I was hauling concrete blocks. Inside, Derek's presence was everywhere despite him taking most of his belongings earlier. His coffee mug in the sink, his running shoes by the door, his smell on the pillows. I stripped off my ruined dress and stood under a scalding shower until my skin turned red and my fingers pruned. Then I wrapped myself in my softest bathrobe and sat on the edge of my bed, staring at Vivian Cross's message on my dying phone. Why did she want to see me? And why now, of all times? I plugged my phone into the charger and watched the screen flicker between life and death. Come on, I thought. Just last until tomorrow morning. As if responding to my desperation, the phone stabilized. The battery icon appeared, showing 5% and climbing slowly. I opened my laptop and did what any rational person would do at 1 in the morning after the worst night of their life. I Googled myself. Rachel Chen, Organizational Consultant, Seattle. The results were sparse. A LinkedIn profile I barely updated. A mention on the tech company's website thanking me for my consulting work. A few academic papers I'd published during my brief stint in a psychology PhD program before dropping out. Nothing that would catch Vivian Cross's attention. I tried another search. Apex Strategic Partners. The results were surprisingly limited for such a legendary firm. A basic website with minimal information. A few business journal articles mentioning their work on corporate restructuring, and one particularly interesting piece from 6 months ago. Apex Strategic Partners expands West Coast operations, seeks top talent in organizational psychology. I clicked through to the full article. It detailed how Apex, traditionally based in New York, was opening a Seattle office to serve tech companies and established corporations throughout the Pacific Northwest. They were looking for consultants who specialized in, and I quote, identifying systemic dysfunction and toxic management structures that impede organizational growth. That was exactly what I did. But I'd never applied to Apex. I'd never even considered it. Firms like that wanted Ivy League credentials and Fortune 500 experience. I had an incomplete PhD and a portfolio of mid-tier companies. Unless. I pulled up my email and searched for the recommendation letter from the tech company CEO. Found it. Read it again with fresh eyes. Ms. Chen demonstrated exceptional insight into complex organizational dynamics. Her ability to identify and document systematic ethical violations. I would recommend her without reservation to any firm seeking top-tier consulting talent. And he'd copied someone on the email. Someone whose address I hadn't paid attention to at the time. vcrossapexstrategic.com. Oh my God, I whispered to my empty apartment. Vivian Cross had been watching me for 3 months. She'd seen my work, possibly investigated my background, maybe even observed me from a distance. And now she wanted to meet. I should have been excited. This was the opportunity of a lifetime, a chance to work with the best in the business, to prove that my unconventional path had been leading somewhere after all. But instead, I felt a creeping sense of unease. Because the timing was too perfect. The day I lost Derek, the day I hit rock bottom, Vivian Cross appeared like some corporate fairy godmother offering salvation. What did she really want? I finally crawled into bed around 2 a.m., my mind still racing. Sleep came in fits and starts, plagued by dreams where I showed up to Vivian's meeting in my destroyed dress while Derek and Marcus and 60 wedding guests laughed from the corner booth. My alarm went off at 7. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck, looked worse, and had exactly 2 hours to pull myself together enough to meet one of the most powerful consultants in the country. I chose my outfit carefully, a charcoal gray suit that struck the balance between professional and approachable. Minimal makeup to hide the evidence of crying. My hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. The effect was polished without trying too hard, capable without being intimidating. The engagement ring was still safety pinned inside my clutch. I took it out, held it up to the morning light streaming through my window. It was beautiful. An emerald-cut diamond that Derek had spent 3 months' salary on, according to him. A symbol of forever that had lasted exactly 8 months. I should have felt sad looking at it. Instead, I felt relieved. I tucked it into my jewelry box and left for North Point Cafe. The cafe was in downtown Seattle, a upscale place that served $15 lattes and had actual art on the walls instead of mass-produced prints. I arrived 10 minutes early and ordered a black coffee I couldn't afford, then claimed a corner table with a clear view of the entrance. Vivian Cross walked in at exactly 9 a.m. I recognized her immediately from the few photos online. She was in her mid-40s, with silver-streaked black hair cut in a sharp bob and the kind of posture that suggested decades of classical training. Her suit probably cost more than my monthly rent. She moved through the cafe like she owned it, and maybe she did for all I knew. Her eyes found me instantly. She walked over with a slight smile. "Rachel Chen?" "That's me." I stood, suddenly feeling underdressed despite my careful outfit selection. "Thank you for meeting with me, Ms. Cross." "Vivian, please." She sat across from me with fluid grace. "And I should be thanking you. I've been looking forward to this conversation." A server appeared immediately. Apparently, Vivian Cross got instant service and took her order for some complicated tea blend I'd never heard of. "I'll be direct," Vivian said once the server left. "I've been following your work for the past 3 months. The analysis you did for Cascade Tech was exceptional." "Thank you. That means a lot coming from you. Your ability to identify systematic ethical violations and document them in a way that was both legally sound and emotionally intelligent, that's rare. Most consultants either miss the human element or get so caught up in it they can't maintain objectivity. You managed both." I felt my cheeks warm. "I appreciate that. I tried to balance. I want to offer you a position at Apex Strategic Partners." Vivian interrupted smoothly. "Not junior consultant, not even senior consultant. I want you as a partner track associate, working directly with me on our highest stakes cases." The cafe seemed to tilt sideways. "I'm sorry, what?" "We're building our Seattle office, and I need someone who understands this city's corporate culture. Someone who can walk into a Fortune 500 company and identify exactly where the dysfunction lives. Someone who isn't afraid to tell powerful people uncomfortable truths. She leaned forward slightly. Someone like you. I don't understand. My resume isn't, I don't have the traditional qualifications. Your resume is a disaster, Vivian agreed cheerfully. Dropped out of a PhD program, no Fortune 500 experience, working freelance gigs that barely pay rent. On paper, you're exactly the kind of consultant I'd normally ignore. My stomach dropped. Then why? Because I don't hire resumes. I hire talent. And you have something that can't be taught. You see systems. Not just organizational charts or reporting structures, but the invisible networks of power and dysfunction that actually run companies. She pulled out a tablet and slid it across to me. On the screen was a document, my analysis of Cascade Tech, the 20-page report I'd submitted to their CEO. This, Vivian said, tapping a specific paragraph, is where you identified that the VP of product development was systematically claiming credit for his team's work. But you didn't just present it as theft. You traced how this pattern was connected to the company's promotion structure, their review process, and even their physical office layout that isolated team members from executive visibility. I remembered writing that section. It had taken me 3 days to map out all the connections. Most consultants would have stopped at VP is stealing credit, recommend termination, Vivian continued. You showed them that the real problem was a system that made such theft not just possible, but inevitable. That's why they were able to fix it, not just fire one person. I just tried to be thorough. You were brilliant. She took a sip of her tea, which had appeared without me noticing. And now I'm offering you a chance to be brilliant on a much bigger stage. What kind of cases are we talking about? Everything. Corporate restructuring, merger integration, executive assessment, organizational psychology, crisis management. We go where the problems are most complex and the stakes are highest. It sounded incredible. It sounded impossible. It sounded exactly like what I'd been working toward without knowing it. There's something you should know, I said carefully. My personal life is complicated right now. My engagement ended yesterday. Badly. Vivian's expression didn't change. I know. You know. Rachel, I've been observing you for 3 months. That includes understanding your personal circumstances. I know you were engaged to Derek Thornton, a regional director at Meridian Global Strategies. I know you had a fight yesterday morning and he called off the wedding. I know you showed up at his promotion party last night and were publicly humiliated. I felt ice run down my spine. You've been watching me? Not in a creepy way, Vivian said with a slight smile. In a professional due diligence way. When I consider someone for a position at Apex, I don't just evaluate their work product. I evaluate their character, their resilience, their ability to handle pressure. And breaking up with my fiancé demonstrates those qualities. How you handled it does. You tried to reconcile despite knowing it would be difficult. When you were humiliated, you left with dignity. And this morning, instead of staying in bed feeling sorry for yourself, you're here having this conversation. She paused. That shows me who you are. It should have creeped me out. Someone investigating my private life, watching my lowest moment, using it to evaluate my professional fitness. But instead, I felt oddly validated. Someone had seen what happened and hadn't judged me for it. Hadn't seen me as dead weight or insecure or jealous. There's one more thing you should know, Vivian said, her tone shifting slightly. Before you make a decision about joining Apex. What's that? One of our current clients is Meridian Global Strategies. The cafe tilted again. Derek's company? Yes, they hired us 3 weeks ago to conduct a comprehensive assessment of their management structure. They've been experiencing high turnover, declining employee satisfaction, and several HR complaints that suggest systematic cultural problems. My mind raced. And you want me to work on that case? Not want, need. Vivian's gaze was steady. You have insight into Meridian's culture that no one else on my team possesses. You've observed their impact on someone you cared about. You understand their methodology from an intimate perspective. You want me to consult on the company that just promoted my ex-fiancé? I want you to help me determine whether Meridian Global Strategies is a functional organization with a few bad actors, or a fundamentally toxic culture that's destroying its employees systematically. The implications crashed over me in waves. If I joined Apex and worked on the Meridian case, I would be evaluating Derek's workplace. I would be interviewing his colleagues, observing his behaviors, potentially making recommendations about his future. After what he'd said to me last night, part of me wanted that power, wanted the chance to expose what Meridian had done to him, to prove that I'd been right to worry. But another part of me, the professional part, knew this was ethically complicated at best and a complete conflict of interest at worst. I can see you're conflicted, Vivian said. That's good. It means you're thinking like a consultant. So let me frame this differently. She pulled up another document on her tablet, this one showing what looked like an organizational chart. Meridian Global Strategies has 63 people in management positions across their Seattle office. 37 of them have been with the company for less than 2 years. That's nearly 60% turnover in management positions. Their employee satisfaction scores have dropped 23% in the past 18 months. And their HR department has logged 42 formal complaints, with 15 resulting in settlements paid out quietly to avoid legal action. Jesus, I muttered. This isn't about your ex-fiancé, Vivian continued. This is about a company that appears to be systematically damaging the people who work for it. Derek Thornton is one employee among hundreds. He's not even particularly important to the case. He just got promoted to regional director. And in 6 months, he'll either burn out, quit, or get fired when he fails to meet impossible expectations. That's Meridian's pattern. They promote people rapidly, give them insufficient support, and then blame them when they crack under pressure. It was exactly what I'd been afraid of, what I'd tried to warn Derek about yesterday morning. If I do this, I said slowly, I need to be completely transparent about my personal connection to the company. Of course, full disclosure in all our documentation. Your relationship to Derek will be noted, and you'll recuse yourself from any evaluations that directly involve him. And if my analysis reveals that he's part of the problem, Vivian smiled, then you document it professionally and let the evidence speak for itself. That's what consultants do. I stared at the organizational chart on her tablet, thinking about Derek's face last night as he humiliated me, thinking about the way his colleagues had applauded his cruelty, thinking about Marcus Webb's words, dead weight. They wanted to play corporate games? Fine. I'd spent 2 years watching from the sidelines. Maybe it was time to step onto the field. What's the salary? I asked. Vivian named a figure that was roughly 4 times what I'd made in the past year. Plus benefits, equity, and bonuses tied to successful case outcomes. You'll start Monday. That's 3 days from now. Is that a problem? It should have been. I should have asked for time to think, to consult with other people, to make sure I wasn't making a massive mistake driven by anger and humiliation. But I looked at Vivian Cross sitting across from me, representing everything I'd worked toward, offering me a chance to prove I was more than Derek's failed fiancé. No problem at all, I said. I accept. Vivian smiled and extended her hand. Welcome to Apex Strategic Partners, Rachel. I think you're going to do extraordinary things. We shook hands and I felt something click into place, a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in months, maybe years. I had no idea then just how right Vivian would turn out to be, or how wrong. But that would come later. For now, I had 3 days to prepare myself for walking into Meridian Global Strategies, Not as Derek Thornton's apologetic ex-fiancé, but as Rachel Chen, consultant for the most elite strategic firm in the Pacific Northwest. 3 days to become someone he wouldn't recognize. 3 days until everything changed. Monday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. I stood outside Meridian Global Strategy's glass tower at 8:45 a.m., watching employees stream through the revolving doors. My new Apex credentials hung from a lanyard around my neck, and I carried a leather portfolio that Vivian had messengered to my apartment over the weekend, along with a welcome packet and 3 different confidentiality agreements. "You'll shadow me for the first week," Vivian had explained during our Sunday prep call. "Observe how I conduct interviews, review documentation, analyze behavioral patterns. Then you'll start conducting your own assessments. And Derek will likely not even know you're in the building. Meridian has 4 floors. Regional directors work on the executive level. We'll be spending most of our time with mid-level management and individual contributors, the people who actually see how the machine works." That should have been reassuring. Instead, it felt like walking through a minefield blindfolded. I pushed through the revolving doors and approached the security desk. The guard checked my credentials, made a phone call, and directed me to the 32nd floor. As the elevator climbed, I watched Seattle shrink beneath me through the glass walls. Vivian was waiting when the doors opened. She looked even more formidable than she had at the cafe, a navy suit that probably cost more than my car, her silver-streaked hair pulled back severely, an iPad under one arm. "Right on time," she said approvingly. "Ready?" "As I'll ever be." "Good, because we're starting with Marcus Webb in 10 minutes. My stomach dropped. Derek's mentor? Meridian's senior VP of strategy. He's been here 14 years and knows where all the bodies are buried. Figuratively and possibly literally. She led me down a corridor lined with glass-walled conference rooms. He requested this meeting personally when he heard Apex was consulting. That tells me he's either genuinely concerned about the company culture or he wants to control the narrative. Which do you think it is? Both, probably. People are complicated. We entered a corner conference room with a view of Elliott Bay. Marcus Webb was already there, sitting at the head of the table like it was his personal throne. He looked different in the morning light, older than he'd seemed at Derek's party, with deep lines around his eyes and mouth. "Vivian," he said, standing to shake her hand. "Pleasure to finally meet in person. Marcus, this is Rachel Chen, one of my associates. She'll be assisting with the Meridian assessment." I watched his face carefully. No recognition flickered there. To him, I was just another anonymous consultant. We sat, and Marcus launched into what was clearly a prepared speech about Meridian's values, their commitment to employee development, their collaborative culture. Standard corporate propaganda delivered with the smooth confidence of someone who'd given this talk 1,000 times. Vivian let him talk for exactly 7 minutes before interrupting. "Your turnover rate in management positions is 58%, she said flatly. "That's not collaborative, that's catastrophic." Marcus's smile never wavered. "We have high standards. Not everyone is cut out for the pace we maintain here." 14 formal HR complaints in the past 6 months, Vivian continued, consulting her iPad. Including 3 allegations of hostile work environment, 2 claims of discrimination, and 1 case of retaliation that cost you a 6-figure settlement. Isolated incidents involving individuals who weren't a good cultural fit. 42 total complaints over 18 months. At what point do isolated incidents become a pattern? I watched Marcus's jaw tighten slightly. He wasn't used to being challenged. "Ms. Cross, I requested this meeting because I want to be transparent about our challenges. Yes, we've had growing pains. Yes, we've made mistakes. But we're committed to improvement. That's why we hired Apex." "Then let's talk about your promotion structure," Vivian said. "How do you identify candidates for advancement?" "Merit-based evaluations, performance metrics, peer reviews, demonstrated leadership capability. Who makes the final decisions? Executive committee. Myself, the CEO, the CFO, and our VP of Human Resources. How often do promoted employees succeed in their new roles? Marcus paused. Define success. Remain in position for at least 12 months without performance issues or voluntary departure. Another pause. I'd estimate 70%. Our preliminary data suggests it's closer to 40%. Vivian slid a document across the table. This shows promotion outcomes over the past 3 years. 60% of promoted employees either left the company or were demoted within their first year. I watched color creep up Marcus's neck. Where did you get this data? HR records that your CEO provided us with full access to. Is there a reason you're surprised by your own company's metrics? I don't believe those numbers are accurate. Then we'll verify them together. Rachel, can you pull up the supplementary documentation? I opened my own tablet, provided by Apex over the weekend, and displayed the spreadsheet Vivian had referenced. Names, promotion dates, departure dates. The pattern was undeniable. Marcus stared at it for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its smooth confidence. Some people can't handle the pressure. We're very clear about expectations when we promote. If they're not ready, that's on them. Or, Vivian said quietly, your promotion structure is designed to fail. You advance people rapidly, give them insufficient support, set impossible targets, and then blame them when they crack. That's not... Let me give you a specific example. She pulled up another document. Jennifer Morrison, promoted to senior project manager 2 years ago. Stellar performance reviews prior to promotion. 3 months into her new role, she started missing deadlines. 6 months in, she was placed on a performance improvement plan. 8 months in, she resigned. I remember Jennifer. Good worker, but she couldn't handle management responsibilities. She filed an HR complaint before she left, I said, speaking for the first time. Both of them looked at me. She claimed her manager, that would be you, Mr. Webb, set contradictory goals, provided no training for her new responsibilities, and routinely undermined her authority in front of her team. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Who are you again? Rachel Chen. I specialize in organizational psychology and systemic dysfunction patterns. The complaint was investigated and found to be unsubstantiated, Marcus said coldly. Investigated by whom? Vivian asked. Our HR department. The same HR department that reports to you through the executive committee? Silence. This is what we're going to do, Vivian said, closing her iPad. We're going to interview every current and former employee we can reach. We're going to review every HR complaint, every performance review, every exit interview, and we're going to determine whether Meridian has a people problem or a system problem. And if you determine it's a system problem, then we'll recommend changes. And your executive committee can decide whether to implement them or watch your company continue hemorrhaging talent. Marcus stood abruptly. I have another meeting. If you need anything else, coordinate through my assistant. He left without shaking hands. Well, Vivian said once the door closed, that was illuminating. He's going to be a problem. Oh, absolutely, which is why we need to move fast before he has time to coordinate a defense. She checked her watch. We have 6 interviews scheduled today. Let's go meet the people who actually run this company. The next 8 hours were a masterclass in extraction of truth from corporate doublespeak. We interviewed a project manager who'd been passed over for promotion 3 times despite exceeding every target. A senior analyst who'd witnessed her colleague take credit for her work in front of Marcus Webb. A team lead who'd burned out so badly he'd been hospitalized with stress-induced chest pains. Each interview followed the same pattern. Initial nervousness, corporate-approved answers, and then, once they realized we were actually listening, the floodgates opened. By 5 p.m., We'd filled 2 notebooks with documented accounts of systematic dysfunction, impossible deadlines, credit theft, favoritism disguised as mentorship. A culture where asking for help was seen as weakness and working reasonable hours was treated as lack of commitment. "This is worse than I thought," Vivian said as we packed up in an empty conference room. "Marcus Webb isn't just a problematic manager, he's built an entire system that replicates his dysfunctional approach throughout the organization." What's the next step? We keep interviewing, we document everything, and in 2 weeks, we present our findings to the board of directors with specific recommendations. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Unknown. I know you're in the building. We need to talk." "Derek." My hands went cold. "Problem?" Vivian asked. "Derek knows I'm here." She raised an eyebrow. "That was faster than I expected. How did he find out?" "No idea, but he wants to talk." "Do you want to?" Did I? Part of me wanted to ignore him completely, but another part, the part that still remembered loving him, was curious. "I don't know," I admitted. "Then here's my advice as your boss. Don't engage until you're ready. You have no obligation to explain yourself to him." She paused. "But as someone who's been through a difficult breakup myself, sometimes having the conversation brings closure. Your choice." I stared at the message. Derek had humiliated me in front of 60 people. He'd called me dead weight. He'd thrown our engagement in my face like garbage. But I wasn't that rain-soaked woman anymore. I was a consultant for Apex Strategic Partners. I was someone with power and purpose. I typed back, "Conference room C, 32nd floor. Now." He appeared 8 minutes later, still in his work clothes but with his tie loosened and his hair slightly disheveled. He looked tired. "Good." "Rachel." He stopped in the doorway, clearly surprised by my transformation, the professional suit, the confident posture, the Apex credentials around my neck. "What the hell is this?" "This is my job." "Since when do you work for Apex Strategic Partners?" "Since Friday." Vivian cross-recruited me personally. I watched him process this information, watched the moment he realized what it meant. "You're consulting on Meridian?" "I'm part of the assessment team, yes." "Are you kidding me?" His voice rose. "You can't do this, Rachel. This is a conflict of interest." "Fully disclosed and approved. I've recused myself from any evaluations that directly involve you." "This is revenge." He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "You're doing this because I broke up with you. Actually, you're not that important to this case. Meridian has 63 people in management positions. You're one of them. I'm a regional director. Congratulations. You're still not the focus of our assessment." He stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "You've changed." "No, Derek. I finally stopped pretending to be smaller than I am to make you comfortable." That landed. He actually flinched. "I supported you," he said. But there was less certainty in his voice now. "I paid rent. I encouraged your consulting work. You tolerated my work as long as it didn't threaten your ego. The moment I questioned whether your promotion was what you really wanted, you threw me away like I was nothing. You tried to sabotage my career. I tried to save you from this." I gestured around the conference room, at Meridian's glass walls and corporate facade. "I watched you become someone I didn't recognize, someone obsessed with climbing a ladder that leads nowhere good. You're jealous. Stop." My voice came out harder than I intended. "Stop telling me what I feel. I wasn't jealous of your success. I was terrified watching what this place was doing to you." What it was doing to me? It gave me opportunities, recognition, advancement. It gave you 80-hour work weeks and panic attacks at 3 a.m. It turned you into someone who humiliates his fiancé in public to impress a room full of people who don't actually care about you. Silence. Derek's face cycled through anger, denial, and something that might have been recognition. Marcus says you're here to tear down everything we've built, he said finally. Marcus is terrified we're going to expose what Meridian actually is. A company that promotes people too fast, provides no support, and then blames them when they fail. That's not... Derek, do you know what your promotion success rate is here? 40%. 60% of people who get promoted either quit or get demoted within a year. Because they couldn't handle it. Or because the system is designed to make them fail. I pulled out my tablet and showed him the data. Look at this. Really look at it. He stared at the screen. I watched his expression shift as he recognized names, remembered departures he'd witnessed. Jennifer Morrison, I said, pointing at one entry. Remember her? Great project manager. Got promoted, then crashed and burned in 8 months. She wasn't ready for management. She filed an HR complaint saying Marcus set her up to fail. Contradictory goals, no training, public undermining. HR investigated. HR works for Marcus, just like you work for Marcus. Just like everyone here works for a system that protects itself instead of its employees. Derek sat down heavily in one of the conference room chairs. For a moment, he looked less like the confident executive from his promotion party, and more like the man I'd fallen in love with. Uncertain, human, vulnerable. What are you going to recommend? He asked quietly. I don't know yet. We're still gathering data. Are you going to get me fired? The question hung in the air between us. I could have said yes. Could have told him that his promotion was likely built on the same broken system as everyone else's, that his success was temporary, that he'd be the next Jennifer Morrison if he wasn't careful. But that would have been cruel, and despite everything, I didn't want to be cruel. That's not my decision to make, I said instead. My job is to document what's broken and recommend fixes. What the board does with that information is up to them. So everything I've worked for could just disappear. Derek, has any of this actually made you happy? The question caught him off guard. What? Your promotion, the long hours, the corporate ladder. Are you happy? He opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. Opened it again. No words came out. That's what I thought, I said softly. I don't know how to be anything else anymore, he admitted. When I wake up, I check email before I'm even fully conscious. I eat lunch at my desk. I fall asleep thinking about quarterly projections. And if I'm not doing those things, I feel like I'm failing. That's not success, Derek. That's addiction. Marcus says. Marcus is using you, just like he's used everyone else who's come through this company. He finds ambitious people, feeds their egos, works them until they break, and then replaces them with the next batch. Derek was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Friday night, at the party. The things I said to you were horrible. Yes. I convinced myself you were trying to hold me back, that you couldn't handle my success. I know. But you weren't, were you? You were trying to warn me. I wanted to say yes, to claim vindication, but that wouldn't be honest. I was trying to warn you, I agreed, but I also handled it badly. I picked the worst possible moment and I didn't explain myself well. I'm sorry for that. I threw our engagement ring at you. Yes, you did. I humiliated you in front of everyone. Yes, you did. He looked up at me, and I saw tears in his eyes. Is there any way to? No, I said gently but firmly. We're not getting back together, Derek. Rachel, you showed me who you are when you're under pressure, and I can't unknow that. I can change. Maybe you can, but not while you're here, surrounded by the same people and the same system that brought out the worst in you. And definitely not while trying to win back someone you treated like garbage. He nodded slowly, accepting the truth he'd probably known the moment he walked into this room. "What do I do now?" he asked. "That's up to you. You can stay at Meridian and hope our recommendations improve things. You can leave and find somewhere healthier. Or you can keep climbing until you burn out like everyone else." I stood up, gathering my things. "But whatever you choose it for yourself. Not because Marcus tells you to, not because it looks good on paper, because it actually makes you happy." I walked to the door, then paused. "For what it's worth," I said. "I hope you find something better. You deserve that much." I left him sitting there, staring at the data on my tablet screen, finally confronting the truth about the ladder he'd been climbing. 2 weeks later, Vivian and I sat in Meridian's largest conference room with the board of directors. Marcus Webb was there too, his expression carefully neutral. Vivian presented our findings with clinical precision, documented patterns of dysfunction, statistical analysis of turnover, direct quotes from interviews, anonymized but damning. The board members' faces grew progressively grimmer as the presentation continued. When Vivian reached our recommendations, Marcus actually stood up. "This is character assassination," he said loudly. "These consultants have spent 2 weeks cherry-picking complaints from disgruntled employees." "Sit down, Marcus," the CEO said quietly. "But sit down." Marcus sat. The CEO turned to Vivian. "What are you recommending?" "Restructure your promotion system to include proper training and mentorship. Implement genuine oversight of the executive committee. Create an independent HR function that doesn't report to the people it's supposed to be investigating. And seriously consider whether Marcus Webb should continue in a leadership position." The room exploded. I tuned out the arguing, watching Marcus's face cycle through rage and fear. He knew what this meant. His empire was crumbling. In the end, the board voted to implement all of Vivian's recommendations. Marcus was offered a choice: accept a demotion to senior consultant with no direct reports, or take a generous severance package. He took the severance. 3 days after our presentation, I got a text from Derek. "Derek, I quit. Last day is Friday. Thank you." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Me. Good luck with whatever comes next." Derek. "You too. You're going to do amazing things, Rachel. I'm sorry I couldn't see it before." I deleted the thread and didn't respond. 6 months later, I stood in my new apartment, a one-bedroom in Belltown with actual square footage and working heating, unpacking boxes from my promotion celebration. Vivian had made me a full partner at Apex. Not partner track. Actual partner. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Rachel Chen. Hi, this is Derek." I hadn't heard his voice in months. It sounded different. Calmer, maybe. "Derek, how are you?" "Good, actually. I'm working for a nonprofit now. Environmental education. Pays half what Meridian did. But I actually enjoy getting up in the morning." "I'm glad. I wanted you to know that I'm in therapy, working through everything. The toxic work culture, the way I treated you, all of it." "That's good, Derek. Really. And I wanted to say thank you for what you did at Meridian. Marcus got exposed because of you. That system got dismantled because of you. You probably saved a lot of people from going through what I went through. That's my job." "No, it's more than that. You cared enough about me to try to warn me, even when I treated you terribly. That's something." I looked out my window at the Seattle skyline, thinking about the woman who'd stood rain-soaked and humiliated in that penthouse 6 months ago. She seemed like a different person now. "Take care of yourself, Derek," I said. "You too. And Rachel? I'm genuinely happy for your success. You earned it." After we hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my new couch in my new apartment, thinking about how strange life was, how humiliation could turn into opportunity, how endings could become beginnings. My phone buzzed with a message from Vivian. Vivian. New case just came in. Major tech company. Suspected executive fraud. You interested? I smiled and typed back. When do we start? Because that's who I was now. Not Derek's ex-fiancé. Not the woman who'd been called dead weight. Rachel Chen. Partner at Apex Strategic Partners. Someone who walked into broken systems and fixed them. Someone who'd finally stopped making herself smaller to make other people comfortable. The rain started falling outside my window, and for the first time in a long time, I actually enjoyed watching it come down. The end. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.